say Vladimir Putin again. But a couple of years ago, he actually sang some song, something about like a Blueberry Hill was the title. I'm not sure. It was in English. It was very interesting. His voice isn't even that deep. I was expecting a tough guy voice out of Putin, and it was actually quite soft. But I think that the president's, I don't think it's below the office of the presidency. And, we see like these photos occasionally of the president with his feet up on the desk in the Oval Office. But you'll go and you'll find pictures of President Bush doing the same thing. So let's not try to get too hypocritical here, especially when our own party is trying to reach out to young voters. I just saw some updates on the Growth and Opportunity Project with the RNC. It seems to be going well so far. And there's a focus on reaching out to young people. And I think that, going on Between Two Ferns, going on things that are comedic, really using the power of the internet is beneficial. And clearly we are past the point where we can just say, oh, look, the Democrats are using social media to an advantage and we're failing, because we can't look at that anymore and say, oh, look what they're doing. We have to do it now. And I think we are stepping up and doing it. But stepping up and doing it also comes with, you can't criticize the president or his party for trying to reach out to the youth or the American people in general through ways outside of Jay Carney, the White House press secretaries and whatnot, because we need to do that ourselves. And if we really, I don't want to go on to a tangent of our ideology and so on, but if we truly believe that our ideas are superior, we don't need to attack the tactics that they're using that we should also be using. We should adopt them, and then we can get our message out better to people.
Yeah, and I actually agree with you. I want to hit on a couple things you said. I mean, first off, the president's appearing on, whether it's Saturday Night Live or in pop culture shows, appealing to the culture has been around since at least Richard Nixon. This isn't something that Barack Obama invented. Certainly, I think, his campaign pushed it into overdrive with things like, celebrity endorsements and, social media, of course.
Actually, if I may say, that was actually half of the DNC in 2012 was people like Eva Longoria and other celebrities, just Scarlett Johansson, saying, oh, I support the president, join me.
Exactly, and what the president is doing is taking advantage of the culture that we already have. We have this celebrity culture, one in which likability is incredibly powerful when it comes to a presidential candidate or a candidate for any office. And when you have celebrity endorsements like Eva Longoria, like Jay-Z and Beyonce, and all of the supporters that the president has, it certainly helps his cause. And you're right that I think a lot of conservatives, a lot of people on the right, tend to kind of look down on some of the tactics that the president employs. And I think some of the liberal progressive marketing tactics, things done by like Lena Dunham, are a little bit below what we should be doing. But, speaking with Zach Galifianakis, I don't think is. And I think we do have this tendency to kind of look down on that and say, oh, we're better than that. We don't want to have any part of that. But at the same time, I think we have in our minds this idealism, this picture of America in which the presidency is above pop culture and does not, get involved in that kind of thing. But that's not the world we live in. The world we live in. Yeah, go ahead.
To keep politics relevant, you have to adapt it. And we adapt the way that we run campaigns. Why are we not adapting the way that the office is portrayed? And especially look at the approval ratings of not just the presidency, but Congress and political parties in this country in general. They're on the decline as a trend, and you really have to think, is it just simply policy, or is it just that people see politics as a world removed from them? And that could be just because of the actual politicians doing it. Mitt Romney, who I'm a fan of, but he did not want to appear on SNL during the election. And that was not a good thing, because he never had a chance to establish any sort of a narrative about himself. Sarah Palin certainly went on in 2008. And yeah, Tina Fey, I am personally a big fan of hers. We might disagree on politics, but I think that's honestly a whatever. But she went on, and she was poking fun at Palin, and Palin went on and embraced it.
And
I don't know if
Palin
you
was
remember
funny, too.
Do you remember that rap
watching
that they had with Amy Poehler? Amy
that was
Poehler,
really
like
funny.
6 or 8 months pregnant, rapping. I still remember the lyrics. It's awesome. So we should embrace that. We shouldn't turn away. And again, to go off on a little more like idealistic tangent here, the presidency with Obama in '08 really became a celebrity type of campaign focused on this guy and how awesome he is, and less of a focus on the policies. And what happened in 2012 was all we did was focus on, well, what all the Democrats did was focus on the character of the president. And he actually had a general likability, whereas what they did was paint Mitt Romney as a bad guy. And people tend to vote with their emotions. They should vote with their wallets, but they really voted with their emotions in that election. And they thought Mitt Romney, bad rich guy, Barack Obama, good populist guy who's fighting against the odds and fighting against Washington. And he hasn't had much success, but, you know, we'll give him another term. And here we are, 2014, and I think people are realizing that did not happen. He betrayed us. And I don't know if it's really that the president betrayed us, or it's just that his policies are bad, and the policies betrayed us. And I hope that people will actually realize that it's the policies that matter. But that said, we need to make sure that our candidate comes out in a good light and is relatable. So, Reince, if you're listening, listen to us.
That'd be very helpful. You know, and you got a good point in that, you know, these surveys that came out after the campaign from you know, Obama voters, and people who voted for Barack Obama in 2012, a lot of them said, well, you know, the president has done things I don't like, but at least he's trying. He might have failed, but at least he's trying. And, you know, well, I personally don't think that's a good quality in a president. I like to see the results of someone who's been in office for 4 years. People, you know, were attracted to his personality. And the Republican Party was seemingly, you know, 2 or 3 years behind technology-wise, campaign-wise. And I actually, have you seen the Netflix documentary about Mitt Romney?
I have. It's excellent.
I have not seen it because I'm terrified to see it. I still have some bad memories from 2012. But if I'm correct, when I've heard about it, you know, Mitt Romney, like you said, you know, didn't want to go on SNL, and some of that was portrayed in this, and that he, you know, didn't want to embrace aspects of his campaign, or at least the campaign did not want to embrace, you know, aspects of making him more personable and bringing the campaign into his personal life. Because I think if the Republican Party had done a better job, you know, really appealing to the personality of Mitt Romney, I think they would have been much more successful. Will they have won? I don't know. But you know, Mitt Romney's a likable guy. He, you know, is a very charitable guy. And it is not the character that the mainstream media, you know, to use that cliched phrase, portrayed him as in 2012. But the problem was the Republican Party didn't do anything to combat that. You know, and we let the left control the narrative. And we're so bad at that. We're so bad at actually being on the offense and going out and having our candidates be in pop culture and marketing to young people and marketing to people who are so influenced by pop culture. And we let the left kind of take care of that entire thing.
Oh, absolutely. And it transcends just pop culture. I think conservatives tend to view politics and personal life as being a separate thing. And there's a political sphere, and then there's reality. And the Democrats merge that, they combine that, because that's how they're going to win elections, and that's how they do win elections. They're successful with that formula. But we try to keep it separate. And I don't want to say Mitt Romney comes from like an old era, but he came from a day and a time where politics was not as personal, and it was very focused on, okay, here's the issues and the policy, and we're going to debate that, but it's not going to go into like every aspect of your life. And the Democrats, they may overplay their hand sometimes with trying to get really involved with how much they push their message, but they seem in general to get it right, that you're always noting that they're a force, they're existing, and they're here to help, they say. They're good for you. And it's strange because, you know, we really have a winning message, or at least we have a winning idea that just needs to be messaged properly. And, I think when it comes to the most important group that we need to message to, that would be millennials. Because typically after you vote for one party in 2 elections, that's how you vote for the rest of your life. And we're looking at increasing lifespans, and the baby boomers moving up and out, and a new set of voters coming into play, and that would be our generation, the millennial generation. And it's one that's very focused on pop culture. Which millennial hasn't seen a Grumpy Cat meme before? Certainly seeing things like Galifianakis. He's a very familiar face. And even if a lot of us think that SNL isn't like a great show, or we don't watch it all the time, we're aware that it exists. And all it takes is one viral clip of the president making a joke for us to say, he's really witty and smart. I'm going to go vote for him because he seems great.
Yeah, no, you are completely right, and I think this pop culture messaging works especially for young people our age. Because I'll be honest, I am knowledgeable enough about politics that I don't let pop culture influence me so much, but I watch enough pop culture to know how that's possible. And I mean, it's, with the amount of young people in our nation today, and this is how, younger generations have always been. We don't have the life experience. We're not as knowledgeable about politics and policy and how the world works. So, things like celebrities and television shows really have a great impact when it comes to how young people vote.
Oh, absolutely. And look at shows where, some on the right will say, they're trying to make gays seem normal or something similar to that. But it's, and people can go off on all sorts of like liberal agenda motives and stuff. But a lot of, I think if the Republican Party and the conservative movement want to look at a particular movement and understand how to win from that movement, I think it'd be to look at the gay rights movement. Because, aside from all this like hijacking talk, if we look at specifically what has the gay rights movement done, they have put themselves out in culture, and they have used the culture to their advantage. And I think now you can see that Americans are rapidly shifting in their opinions. Disclaimer, I am, pro-gay rights, so I might seem a little biased here. But I think it has definitely worked. And I think if you want to, get the conservative ideology out there and promote it, you have to use pop culture to assist it. That said, you can't overdo it with like Tim Allen, I think, where you just go super out on like pro-Romney everything, or something similar to that, where you're just like, oh yeah, well thank goodness there's low tax rates here because, I can go blah, blah, blah. Like, that is not an effective way to communicate. But definitely understanding how to use the narrative and use it to our advantage. I think the time will come, and we'll see an opportunity where we can use it probably in the next presidential election, and use it in an appropriate setting. Because, again, if you turn up the politics too much, people don't like that. Because a lot of people still see it as separate realms, and if I, for example, go tweet tons of political things all the time, my friends will unfollow me. And I think the same is true for most millennials, if not almost all.
And there's a healthy medium. I think I've talked about this in the show before. We're going to go ahead and go to break here in a couple minutes, but I've noticed this kind of dichotomy, or this difference between the show. Do you watch The Last Man Standing with Tim Allen? Or are you aware of it?
I'm aware of it, yeah.
Okay. It's a sitcom, and his character is this huge Republican. I mean, like, hardcore Republican. Every single episode, he's always making comments about conservatism, Mitt Romney, and the Republican Party. And, I actually kind of like the show. I think it's funny. It harkens back to Home Improvement, which I grew up with, so there's a lot of nostalgia there when I'm watching the show. But there was this one episode on the 2012 election that I actually had to skip the first 10 minutes because all he did, Tim Allen's character, was talk about Mitt Romney and how great he was and Republicanism, and pushed it too hard. But then on the other side, you have shows like, I don't know if this is necessarily a good